In a far corner of the galaxy where stars burn cold and laws are written by those with power, there floated a massive metal station known as Arena Core, a place where the strong displayed their might and the weak were laughed at or forgotten. Built like a fortress in the void, it held within it the most savage tournament known across the sectors. Fighters from 100 species came to prove their dominance under the cold lights of its battle cages. Among these fighters, one figure stood out, not for his size or his armor or his race, but for how simple and unimpressive he looked. He was a human, a man named Liam, wearing no weapon, just a dark, sleeveless suit that left his arms bare and his hands free, his brown eyes calm, his face unreadable, and his body still like a shadow waiting to move. Most beings in the galaxy considered humans unworthy of real attention. They were laborers, slaves, merchants, or scientists, rarely soldiers, and never warriors. So when Liam was pulled from a prisoner transport ship by arena officials and placed into the next fight, it was seen as a joke, a novelty act, something to amuse the crowd before the real battles began. His opponent was anything but a joke. Kari was a high-born warrior from a planet where children were trained to kill before they could walk. Her race stood over 8 feet tall, their muscles dense like steel, and their pride as deep as space. She walked into the arena with her chin high, her silver skin marked with ritual scars, her body covered in heavy armor that moved like a second skin, and in her hand she carried a spear of pure plasma humming with energy. The announcer did not even try to hide the bias, calling Kari a true daughter of war, while Liam was introduced simply as the human without honor or title. When the gates slammed shut behind them, the crowd roared, ready to see Kari destroy this soft creature who dared to step into her domain. Kari looked at Liam with contempt, her voice deep and sharp when she spoke, calling him a slave, a worm, a thing without value. She asked him if he was ready to beg for mercy, and laughed when he said nothing. She spread her arms wide and promised the crowd that she would end him in less than a minute. The crowd screamed in approval, but Liam did not react. He stood still, eyes on her, not blinking, not moving, breathing slow, as if time was slower for him. As Kari took her first step forward, he tilted his head slightly, and then something in the air shifted. The fight began with a roar. Kari charged like a storm, her spear a blur, her speed unnatural for her size. She came with full strength, planning to end it in a single blow. She lunged, and the spear flashed toward Liam's chest, but he moved. He did not jump or run. He simply stepped aside at the exact right moment, with a movement so smooth, it seemed like he had read her attack before it began. The spear missed air, and Kari stumbled slightly. The crowd fell silent for a second. Liam raised his hand and beckoned her silently. Kari's pride flared. She roared and attacked again. This time with a flurry of strikes, she spun her spear low and high, aiming at his legs, his neck, his heart. But every swing missed. Liam moved with grace, each dodge tight, each step clean. He was not fast like a machine. He was fast like water flowing through cracks, impossible to catch. Then he struck back just once, not with power, but with intent. His open palm hit her side, and Kari stumbled backward, blinking. Not hurt, but surprised. The crowd started to murmur, unsure of what they were seeing. Kari narrowed her eyes and changed tactics. She activated the shield built into her armor. The air around her shimmered, and her spear crackled brighter. She launched into a jump, landing with a shockwave that shook the floor, her voice now filled with anger as she shouted at Liam to stop playing and fight like a real warrior. But Liam only moved again, never speaking. His silence became louder than any shout, each movement a quiet defiance. He was not just dodging, he was learning. Every motion, every breath, every twitch from Kari was being read and recorded in his mind. Arena masters watching from above frowned. Some leaned forward, curious, while others laughed nervously. This human was still alive, not bleeding, not even breathing hard. Kari's reputation was not built on ceremony. She had crushed veterans, broken machines, and snapped bones of beasts larger than shuttles. But here was a human dodging her like she was a child swinging at Aaron. That moment something else started to spread across the arena, something dangerous: curiosity. Who was this human, and why was he not dead? Yet the answer was not in his past, not in his muscles or tools. It was in how he moved, like he had been made for this moment, like he had lived his entire life waiting for this exact kind of fight. And for Liam it was true, because for years he had trained in a secret place back on Earth, where bodies were pushed beyond limits, where reflexes were sharpened, not by machines, but by purpose. He had left that life behind, thinking he would never need it again. But now, here in this ring, he found himself waking up, not with hate, not with rage, but with something cleaner. A purpose, something that said no more kneeling, no more laughing at humans, no more cages. As Kari charged again, her spear raised, Liam took his first full step forward, not to dodge but to engage. And though the crowd did not know it, and Kari did not see it, this was the moment where everything changed. The 30 seconds had just begun, but the end was already written in his silence. The real fight was about to begin, and the galaxy would remember what came next forever. The floor beneath their feet hummed with energy as the timer above the arena ticked forward, counting each second like a slow drumbeat in the background. Kari tightened her grip on the plasma spear, her eyes burning with fury, the mocking laughter she once shared with the crowd was gone, replaced by frustration and disbelief. Human was still standing, not only standing, but moving, like he belonged in the arena, like the steel and fire around him was his home. Liam had not spoken a word yet. Every step, every glance told a story, told them all that he was not here by accident, and certainly not here to entertain them. Kari rushed forward again, this time. Her spear turned sideways, slicing through the air with speed that shattered sound barriers. She moved with calculated rage. Each step meant to corner him, force him into a position where his human weakness would betray him. But Liam saw through it, ducked under the swing, letting the weapon pass inches above his head. He twisted his body with a turn that seemed impossible at that speed, and slid along the ground like a shadow. Kari's follow-up strike hit nothing but floor, sending a burst of sparks flying around her feet. She growled a deep growl that echoed across the arena, and her armor flared with power, thin lines of red energy glowing across her back and shoulders. The armor was now assisting her moves, making her faster, stronger, sharper. But it didn't matter. Liam waited for her next step, and as she lunged again, he placed his hand on the shaft of the spear just briefly, and used it not to block, but to guide her momentum off target. Her body went flying past him, her balance broken, and her face twisted with confusion. He didn't counterattack, not yet. Instead, he circled her, not like a predator circling prey, but like a soldier watching a mistake unfold. Audience began to shift their tone. They leaned in closer, their cheers fading into uncertain murmurs. Kari, the one who promised to end it quickly, was now struggling. Her power was undeniable, but Liam was not playing by the rules. Her species understood. Somewhere in the private viewing deck, the arena masters whispered among themselves, their expressions serious. For the first time, one of them pulled up old Earth records, searching for anything on a human named Liam, and what they found made them pause. Project Helix, forgotten program, buried in Earth's military archives, meant to create soldiers with absolute neural control through training that pushed body and mind to evolve, not with machines, not with implants, but through sheer adaptation. Only a few subjects had survived it. Most had vanished or been lost. Liam was one of them. Back in the arena, Kari charged again. This time she screamed a roar of fury that shook the walls, and she swung the spear with all the energy her suit could channel. The air burned as it moved. Liam stepped into the attack, not away. He caught the weapon with both hands, not to stop it, but to redirect it, and then in one smooth motion he pulled her forward off balance. Her body stumbled, and in that exact moment he drove his knee upward into her exposed midsection. The sound of impact was not loud, but the effect was instant. Kari's breath caught her eyes wide. With shock, the spear dropped from her grip and clattered onto the floor. Crowd gasped as she fell back, taking a step and trying to recover her pride. Her strength, her stance, but Liam followed her pace, silent and relentless, and before she could raise her fists, he struck again, a low sweep kick aimed at her ankle, sending her collapsing to one knee. Still no words from him, no taunts, no celebration, only the silence of someone who had already seen this fight happen in his mind and was now simply walking through it. Kari looked up at him, her voice rough and confused. She asked what kind of human he was. What had they done to him? Answered not with words, but with a glance. A deep look that told her everything. He was not created by science or born from revenge. He was simply a product of being ignored, underestimated, discarded. And now the galaxy was watching what that created. The announcer tried to stir the crowd back into excitement, but it was too late. The mood had shifted dramatically. Aliens who had once laughed at the sight of a human in the cage now sat quiet, some impressed, others disturbed, and a few afraid. Liam moved back slightly, allowing Kari to stand. She picked up her weapon, hand shaking. Armor cracked, her eyes filled with confusion and doubt. She took a deep breath and launched one more attack, trying to bury her fear under motion. Liam met her mid-charge. Stepping into the storm, he weaved under the swing of her spear, raised his elbow and drove it straight into her chest plate. The hit broke through the outer layer and sent a pulse of feedback through her suit, disabling part of her systems. She stumbled again, but Liam was not done. His fist came next, striking her shoulder, then her thigh, then her ribs, each hit placed with surgical precision. Each one aimed to break her rhythm and her balance, not her bones, not her life. Within seconds, she dropped to both knees, gasping, trying to rise, but unable to find the strength. 30 seconds had not passed yet. Liam stood over her, now watching her struggle, not with arrogance, but with understanding. He knew this fight was never fair, but not for the reason they had all believed. It wasn't unfair because he was weak. It was unfair because they never thought he could be strong. And now they were learning. Kari tried to speak, but the words were lost in her breathing. She looked up at him with eyes that no longer held hate, only disbelief. Liam turned slightly, facing the crowd, not to boast, but simply to let them see the truth. And in that moment, the human who had been called worthless stood not as a joke, not as a victim, not even as a warrior. He stood as proof that humans were not done, not broken, not beneath the stars, but rising in silence, rising through pain, and rising faster than the galaxy had time to prepare for. And this was just the beginning. The silence in the arena was heavier than steel. The crowd that once cheered for blood now sat frozen, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Kari, the warrior of honor, the symbol of strength, had been brought to her knees, not by a champion from another empire, not by a war beast from the outer rim, but by a human, a man without armor, without weapons, without fear. Liam stood still, not moving, not speaking. His chest rose and fell with calm rhythm. His face was unreadable, but his eyes spoke of something deeper, something colder than anger and older than revenge. He looked down at Kari, who still struggled to catch her breath. Her armor cracked, her pride shattered, her hands shaking, not from pain but from realization. She had never considered the idea of losing, especially not to a human. All her life, she had trained for combat. Her victories had earned her rank, her reputation, her place among the elite. She was taught that humans were fragile creatures, clever perhaps, but weak at heart. But in these few moments, that belief had been torn apart by the fists of a silent man. Kari tried to stand again. Her body protested with every movement, but her mind refused to give up. She was a warrior, and even if defeat tasted like fire, she would not fall without a final strike. But before she could lift her foot, Liam moved, and for the first time since the fight began, he spoke. His voice was steady, not loud, not soft, just solid, like stone pressed through years of silence and struggle. You already lost. Kari froze. His words struck deeper than any wound she had taken, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. She felt it not just in her body, but in her spirit. The weight of those words settled into her chest, heavier than her armor. Liam turned away, not out of disrespect, but because the fight was done. He knew it, she knew it, and now the arena knew it too. He began walking toward the gate that had closed behind him when the match started, each step echoing across the arena floor. The announcer hesitated, unsure what to say, unsure how to spin this outcome into entertainment. His voice cracked as he declared the match over. The words sounded empty, hollow, nothing like the usual victorious roars the arena was used to hearing, and then it happened. Something no one expected. A small group in the crowd began to clap. It was not loud, not wild, just a steady rhythm of hands striking together. A quiet salute to something rare, something powerful. Others joined, and soon the sound filled the space. Not cheers of celebration, but of respect, the kind given to those who change the game simply by being present. Up in the viewing decks, the arena masters watched in silence, their eyes wide, their mouths shut. They had planned this fight as a joke, a display of superiority. Now it had become a message, one that would travel far beyond the walls of the arena, far beyond the station, far into the systems where humans lived as workers and slaves. News feeds from across the sectors began replaying the fight from every angle. Analysts tried to explain how a human had defeated a warrior bred for war. Scientists argued about enhanced reflexes, secret training, forbidden genetics, but none of them could explain the look in Liam's eyes, that silent, burning calm that said he didn't fight to prove anything. He fought because he was done being underestimated. Some called him the Silent Storm. Others named him the Ghost of Earth, and in underground channels among the human colonies, his name became a whisper of hope, not loud, but present a reminder that the fire was still there waiting. Kari was taken from the arena by her own people, not in chains, but in shame. She did not protest, she did not speak, and though her injuries would heal, the wound to her pride would remain deeper than any scar she had ever carried. She had faced something she did not understand, not a man, but a symbol. Liam returned to the holding area. Quietly, the guards who had once mocked him now avoided his gaze. They opened doors with nervous hands and never asked questions. He sat in the corner of his cell, not because he was tired, but because he was thinking, his mind still moving, still calculating. This fight had ended, but the war inside him had remembered. The training camps, the experiments, the endless tests that broke the weak and changed the strong. He remembered the silence of those halls, the pain, the loss, and most of all the way the world forgot them when the program failed and was shut down. He had survived not because of what they gave him, but because of what they took away. Fear, doubt, hesitation. Now, he had given something back to the universe, not with speeches or fire, but with 30 seconds of motion, 30 seconds that said everything that needed to be said. The rebel channels lit up after the match. Humans in mining worlds, farming outposts, and hidden colonies shared the footage, watched it again and again. Children stared in awe, parents wept in silence, and the elders smiled, not because they saw violence, but because they saw proof that they were not broken. Liam did not know all this, yet he sat alone waiting for what came next, knowing that the arena would not let this end so easily. He had changed something too big to ignore. And the people in power did not like change that came without their permission. But he was ready. He had waited years in silence, not just to survive, but to find the right moment. And now that moment had come, not with warning, not with war, but with a single quiet fight between a forgotten man and a proud warrior. Galaxy had seen it, and the galaxy would remember it, not because of the blood, not because of the strength, but because of the look in his eyes when he faced her, the calm, the stillness, the truth. He was not fighting her, he was fighting the lie, and he had won. The days after the fight moved like waves through the galaxy, spreading whispers, rumors, and warnings. The story of a human defeating an elite alien warrior traveled faster than any ship, faster than any official report, and while some doubted the truth, others had seen it with their own eyes, and no explanation could remove the memory of that silent man standing tall while a warrior knelt before him. Liam remained inside the arena complex, locked in a higher security cell, guarded not because he had attacked anyone after the match, but because those in control feared what he represented. They could not allow him to walk free, not when his very presence had stirred Unrest not when his silence had sparked the beginning of something they could not control. Arena officials debated what to do with him. Many argued for his execution. Not in secret, but in front of the crowd to remind the galaxy who still held the power. Others wanted him sent to a deep prison, where stories would forget him and his name would vanish. But the problem was his story had already escaped the walls. The moment he stepped out of that cage, his legend had been born, and legends do not die quietly. In the darkest corner of the complex, Liam sat unmoving, his back against the cold metal wall, his breath steady, his hands resting on his knees, not tied, not chained. They had tried that, but learned quickly that restraint was meaningless. To someone like him, he did not resist, but he also did not comply. He simply waited, like a storm behind a closed door, waiting for someone foolish enough to open it. Above in the viewing decks, the commanders of the arena prepared a new match, this time not for entertainment, but for a message. They had selected a new challenger, not one with pride or honor, but one with cruelty, a genetically altered brute from a system where war was bred in glass tubes, a creature with no language, no mercy, no history, only purpose to destroy. The match was set without his consent, without warning. They came to his cell, opened the doors, and pointed him forward. They did not speak, and neither did he. He stood, walked, and followed, not because he obeyed, but because he understood this was part of the game, and he was not done playing yet. As the gates opened, the crowd was different, no longer laughing, no longer mocking. Now they watched with quiet interest, eyes wide, hearts waiting. They wanted to know if it was a fluke, or if what they had seen before was real. The new fighter stepped into the light, towering over Liam by several heads, muscles swollen and unnatural eyes glowing with red light, skin marked by burns and scars. Its breath came in short, violent bursts, and the ground cracked beneath its feet when it moved. But Liam did not flinch. He looked at the creature with calm eyes, his body relaxed, his mind clear. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of 1,000 stares pressing down on him, but none of it mattered, because this fight was never about proving strength. It was about waking the galaxy. It dawned on him. Signal rang, and the creature lunged faster than its size should have allowed, its arms wide, its fists swinging with the weight of steel and fire. Liam ducked, rolled, stepped aside, his body flowing like wind against stone, and for every blow dodged. He answered with a strike, not with rage, but with precision. Every hit landed on a nerve, a joint, a pressure point, designed to shut the creature down. Not kill, but break. Within moments, the brute began to slow, its confidence fading, its movements losing shape. It swung wildly, and Liam stepped inside the strike, raised his elbow, and drove it into the creature's neck. The sound of impact sent a ripple through the arena, and the beast staggered to one side, coughing, struggling to breathe. Liam followed with a low kick, a sharp turn, and a final palm strike to the chest. The creature collapsed with a thud, dust rising around its body as silence swept the crowd once again. But this time something else happened. From the side of the arena, a voice called out, not an official, not a guard, but a spectator, a young alien from a lesser species, one often silenced in these events. He raised his hand and shouted his respect for the human. Then another voice joined him, then another. Soon the silence broke. Not with fear, but with support. They clapped, they chanted his name, not in celebration of violence, but in recognition of what he had done. Not once now, but twice he had stood against impossible odds, not with hate, but with discipline, not with fire, but with stillness. In the control rooms, the commanders panicked. This was no longer a fight. This was a spark, and sparks lead to fire. They ordered the match feed to be cut, but it was too late. Outside the arena, thousands were already watching through pirated streams across ships, planets, and colonies. The name Liam had become a symbol, not of rebellion, but of awakening. And deep within the arena, after the fight, Liam stood alone in the center, not raising his hands, not shouting. He simply looked upward toward the place where the stars waited, and in his silence he said everything that needed to be said. Would try to stop him, they would try to erase him, but the idea had already escaped the cage, and the idea was stronger than any wall they could build in secret chambers across the systems. Old resistance networks lit up again. Messages sent in coded bursts. Questions asked. Do you know the name? Do you believe the story? Back on Earth, in forgotten cities, buried in dust and noise, people gathered around old screens watching the clips again, and again parents showed their children old flags, old songs, old hopes that had been quiet for too long. Liam did not return to his cell this time. He was taken somewhere deeper, but it did not matter because he had already won, not the moment, but the meaning. He had shown the galaxy what one man could do, with focus, with silence, with purpose, and far away in the cold, quiet parts of space, other humans began to rise, not with weapons, not yet, but with questions, with thoughts, with the sudden belief that maybe, just maybe, the time had come to stop bowing and start standing. Arena had given him a platform, and he had used it not to fight, but to remind them all of something. They had forgotten that humans do not stay down forever. The ship moved silently through the dark stretch of space, its engines low, its purpose hidden within its cold steel walls. A man sat alone in a chamber, no windows, no doors, just a cube of silence. Lit by soft blue lights, his hands rested on his knees, his back straight, his breath calm. The guards watched him through hidden screens, unsure if they were guarding him or being protected from him. Liam had not spoken since his last fight. He had not resisted when taken to this new place. No chains, no cuffs, just men with weapons and orders to keep him isolated. The masters of the arena did not want him dead. Not yet, not because they feared killing him, but because they feared what his death would do. They feared what it might spark in the systems where humans worked, slept, and dreamed under the rule of others across the galaxy. People remembered his face. Even those who had only seen glimpses of him now carried his image in their minds. His silence, his stillness, his focus. He had become more than a fighter. He had become a sign, a question pressed into the hearts of millions. What if humans were not weak in mining colonies deep below? Alien soil workers began to speak of Liam in whispers. Some drew his face on walls, others changed their work codes to his name in slums and stations. His story traveled from mouth to mouth with growing fire. He was called the man who stood against power and made it kneel, the man who did not shout, but was still heard. Liam sat quietly, not knowing the reach of his presence, not needing to. He had not set out to become anything. He had only done what he knew was right, what he felt was necessary. The fights were never about pride or glory. They were moments of truth pressed into violence. Meanwhile, powerful leaders of empires met behind locked doors, their conversations filled with fear and anger, not about Liam alone, but about what he had caused. They spoke of unrest on outer worlds, of human workers refusing orders, of supply routes slowing, of guards hesitating. They spoke of systems where humans once bowed, now raising their eyes. They debated methods, silenced the story, erased the footage, offer rewards for counter-narratives, spread lies, create doubt. But it was too late. The truth had moved faster than their orders had reached, farther than their influence could touch. It was not just the footage. It was the feeling, the shift, the change. Something had broken, and it would not be repaired easily. Back on the ship, Liam finally stood, his body steady, his eyes forward. The door opened slowly for the first time, not by force, but by invitation, and a figure stepped in, not a soldier, not a commander, but a woman dressed in dark, simple clothes. Her voice was calm but carried weight. She did not give her name. She did not need to. She told Liam they were moving him not to another prison, but to freedom. An old network had pulled favors, called in debts, created space for his escape. There were people who wanted to meet him, rebels, traitors, ex-soldiers, leaders of forgotten causes, people who still believed in the fire of the human spirit, and they wanted him not as a symbol, but as a spark. Liam did not speak. He only nodded, his silence louder than words. They walked together through the ship, no alarms, no sirens, just footsteps through steel, until they reached the hangar, where a small vessel waited. It was fast, unregistered, and ready. Before he boarded, the woman looked at him and asked him the question many had feared to ask. What do you want? He paused for a long time, his eyes distant, then turned toward her and answered, not with anger, not with hope, but with truth. I Want them to see, the words hung in the air, simple and final. He stepped into the ship and vanished into the stars. Weeks passed, then months. His name faded from official channels, but not from the minds of those who had watched his rise. He appeared again, not on screens, but in moments. A fight broken up on a slave planet. A patrol missing in deep space. A broadcast hacked with a symbol, a silent face. He was never caught, never claimed by any faction, never owned, and never loud, but he moved across the systems like wind through dry grass, igniting sparks wherever he passed. Alien empires grew restless, their grip weaker, their orders questioned. More humans stood up, not with violence, but with purpose. They began to learn, train, resist, speak, and in the places where they were still punished, others rose behind them stronger. Each time Liam became a myth, but also a map, a direction for those who had forgotten what it meant to stand straight and look their captors in the eye. He was not a leader. He did not want followers. He only wanted them to remember that humans were born in fire and shaped by struggle, that silence could carry strength, that even in the cold, vast dark of space, a single man could light a flame that would never go out. Years later, when new generations asked where it all began, they would not point to governments or armies or great battles. They would point to a ring of steel, a quiet man, a mocking voice, and 30 seconds that changed everything. And somewhere far from crowds, far from noise, beneath stars that had never heard his name, Liam would watch, not as a hero, but as a man who once refused to kneel and made the galaxy remember why. The end.